Good morning. Did you think I wasn't going to be here? I had to turn the camera on or hit record. So it was a last second thought. I was like, oh no, I remember what I have to do. That's church planning for you. You got to figure out what you missed and make sure it's happening. So I want to welcome those of you who are here live and also live on Facebook. We finally got that up and running. So we just want to welcome you to Restoration Church. My name is Brian, and I am the pastor here. And we're glad that you guys are here. It's kind of a, I don't know, winter day. You had to expect it, though, right? I mean, we had nice weather, but you knew that wasn't going to last because we're in northern Michigan, and the sun hates us. So, except for the summertime, it's okay. But we are glad that you're here. We're in this series called That Escalated Quickly. We're going to take a break next week. We're going to go into, because it's Easter, so we're going to talk about how Jesus proved it. And that message is called Prove It. We've been doing these Prove It cards for several weeks now to show how we as a community can prove it to people around us that we are people following Jesus. And so that's what all of those cards were, just to let people know who we are and try to do these acts of faith. So that's what the Prove It cards are. That's why we do that. And this Sunday, this next Sunday, is the culmination of all of that when we talk about the reason why we prove it, which is Jesus. So that's going to be next week. But we're still in That Escalated Quickly. We're going to be in chapter 8 today of Genesis. So if you haven't, a Bible app, if you've got an actual Bible, we encourage you to open those up. The words will also be on the screen, so that's not a problem at all if you didn't bring one, but never trust everything that I say, and so bring a Bible with you, because I might throw something in there that's not actually there, and you'll just take my word for it, and you'll think something weird happened, which a lot of weird stuff does happen, or you'll have to verify that actually happened, like chapter 6, right? We had to really verify that one, but we're in chapter 8 today. We're in the middle of the flood. The flood is happening, and Noah's been in a boat for a while. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience. How many of you guys grew up going to church? Just like you grew up, okay, great. So I also did, and this was before cell phones. And my parents we were really, really, really good Christians, okay? We had Sunday morning services, we had Sunday night services, we had Tuesday night prayer meeting, then we had a Wednesday night Awana. My parents also cleaned the church when I was real young, so we would be there maybe on like a Friday or a Saturday night cleaning the church. I was in church a lot, okay? So much so that I thought I pretty much lived there. We only lived about 10 minutes from the church, so we basically did. And I remember one Sunday night specifically. The church was a pretty large Baptist church. I mean, the building was large. And there was a main floor that had, the sanctuary and the lobby. We didn't really call it a lobby. We called it a foyer. I don't know why, because I don't know why we call it. Somebody else can tell me that later. Or maybe you called it a narthex. If you're like Christian Reformed, you probably called it a narthex. Anyway, it's just a glorified lobby is all it is. And then there was a basement. Church basements were the creepiest places on the face of the planet. I don't know what it is about a church basement. I'm a grown man now, and I still don't like church basements. If the lights are off and I'm the only one there, I get afraid, and I run as quickly as I can in the dark, and I get hurt typically. So, because I don't know my surroundings. But I don't know what it is about a church basement. They're weird and creepy. So I, though, would play with my cousins. We all grew up together. We would play down in the basement while my parents were talking upstairs, or while they were cleaning, or anything that they were doing. We would go down in the basement, run around. We would play tag. We'd play hide and go seek. We'd play, name it, anything that involved running and trying to find each other. We would play this game. So we're having a good old time, me and my cousins. And one Sunday night, we go back upstairs because it's like, well, it's getting late. Mom and Dad are probably ready to leave. And we go upstairs, and we're the only ones in the church. My parents, love you, they'll watch later, forgot me at church. I was left at church. Have any of you guys ever been left at church before? No? Wow, okay. Let me tell you what this is like. It's not great, okay? I sat on the front steps of the church. Maybe I started crying because you have to believe this is before cell phones. This is before I could just text mom and dad and be like, hey, mom and dad, you missed someone at the church when you went home. See, what happened, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because this is what they've told me, is that they thought my aunt was going to take me home, and my aunt thought that because I was nowhere in the church, I was really good at hide and seek, thought that I was going to be, I must have gone with my parents. And so they both left without me. It was like Home Alone, except not at all. It was Home Alone in church, and I was afraid, and I wasn't like Macaulay Culkin whatsoever. If burglars would have come, I would have just given up and said, take me, I guess. That got dark. Sorry. Yeah, so I got left at church, just left there. And then my parents finally realized it, and they had to come back. And I mean, they did come back and get me, which was nice. But at that time, there was no way for me to get communication to my parents. I didn't know how to use the church phone. The offices were locked. I was just going to have to wait until they figured out that actually happened, like that they were missing one child. And I grew up with a lot of siblings, so it probably took a while. Oh, I think everybody's here. Nope, maybe not. Has anybody ever been left somewhere before? Like you've been, thank you, December has. Anybody else just been, Clayton? Okay, so you kind of know what it feels like to be forgotten. I went to a concert a few summers ago. I went to there was Hillsong. They were playing at Van Andel. And I was doing some AV stuff with a company that I'd used to work for just to make ends meet. And so I was going down there. They invited me to come down. They had gotten this suite, a suite at Van Andel Arena to watch Hillsong. And so I was like, cool, yeah, I'll come down. They were bringing in some other churches to like do some client stuff. And so I go there and I call them when I get there. I'm like, hey, where do I got to meet you guys? Where's my ticket? And they didn't have a ticket for me. They forgot that I was coming down. So we had to sneak in. I used somebody else's ticket, somehow got up there. I don't know how it happened, but we made it happen. And anyway, so I'm just a forgotten person, I guess. I say all of that because Noah probably felt this way. Noah probably felt like he had been forgotten. It had been raining for 40 days. Water was coming up from the ground for 40 days. He was in a boat with all these stinking animals and all of his relatives for 40 days. You think quarantine is bad right now? Imagine just being in a boat. You can't go outside. You can't go for a walk. You have to take care of the animals. You're just in a boat for a really long time. Noah was quarantined, so we can identify with Noah here. But Noah probably felt forgotten. It's like, man, when is this going to stop? It's been raining for 40 days. I'm pretty sure the earth is covered. We have not seen a single piece of dry land. We haven't seen a single piece of dry land, not even a mountaintop yet. He probably felt forgotten. And I think we can identify with that. Sometimes in our lives, we feel forgotten, don't we? We feel a little bit forgotten. Well, let's open up our Bibles now. I told you to do that a long time ago, so it should already be open. Chapter 8, starting in verse 1. But God, oh goodness gracious, that's a great phrase right there. Anytime there's trouble in our lives, anytime something is happening, we can always rely on a but God. But God. But God remembered Noah. You should underline that. If you're an underliner person, highlight it in your Bible, whatever you got to do. Underline that. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the water had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So he's not just in a boat for 40 days. Sometimes we get this picture in our heads that Noah was in a boat for 40 days with his family and then immediately got off, right? Got off the boat, right? It's what it's on the mural in the nursery where it's like, oh, and then Noah got off the boat. It's really great. He was there for 10 months before he hit dry ground, before he hit a mountaintop, before the boat stopped moving. He was there 10 months long. So yeah, he was probably feeling like he was forgotten. Just a little bit. And what's interesting, just real quick, God never told Noah when he was going to get off of the boat, right? He told him to get on the boat, but that was the instruction. Noah, get on the boat. And I'm not going to tell you when you're going to get off until it's time to get off the boat. You're going to have to wait. And last week we talked about, man, just taking that step. What is God telling us to do? God is telling us to get into the boat. And now sometimes we find ourselves in the boat and we're like, well, now what? We read it last week that he waited 7 days before he actually closed the door. And sometimes we're in that waiting period of like, well, I'm on the boat. Now what do you want me to do? Here's Noah in the boat. He has no idea when this is going to end, when the water is going to subside. I mean, there's got to be some mind games going on there, right? Cabin fever a little bit. He probably started wearing his tunic on top of his head and like dancing around. I mean, I saw Castaway with Tom Hanks. He probably had a volleyball that he put a handprint on. I mean, he probably invented volleyball while he was on the ark. See, this is why you have to have a Bible with you, because you don't know. That's where Castaway came from. Tom Hanks got that idea from Noah's Ark. It's in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. I don't want to lead you guys astray. Okay, so we're going to keep going. Verse 6, at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark. So that's 40 days after the 10 months. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. All right, we're going to stop there again. So Noah is trying to figure out if the ground is ready to go yet. Noah's trying to figure out if he can get off the ark. When is this going to end? Please let it end. If I was Noah, I would have been sending that dove out every single day. I would not have been able to handle it any longer. I was cooped up in this ark. We're going to send this dove out every single day to see if we can get something. But he waits 7 days. First he sends a raven out, and a raven's just like, no, I'm good. I'm good out here. I don't know what's happening, but we're just going to stick around out here and fly around. Then he's like, I'm going to get smart and send a dove, because doves are a lot smarter than ravens, I guess. And the dove looks around, doesn't see anything the first trip. Second trip, the dove finds an olive leaf. Not an olive branch, an olive leaf. A dove couldn't carry an olive branch, but he carries an olive leaf. And he brings it back to Noah. And I think it's interesting that we still have this kind of imagery today of extending an olive, we call it an olive branch, but extending the olive branch, right? It means to make peace with someone, so that we're going to be okay, that we're moving forward. I'm extending this olive branch. This was a sign for Noah that says, okay, things are progressing. We're moving along. There's an olive leaf, but I'm still going to wait 7 days because I still don't see much. Then he waited 7 more days and sends out the dove. And finally, the dove doesn't come back. And Noah knows that it's time to get off the boat. Keep going. Verse 13. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. There was probably like 10,000 rabbits already. Overrun with rabbits. Noah waited. He waited and he kept waiting. See, there was dry ground. The bird didn't come back. The dove didn't come back. So he knew that the land was ready. But yet he still waited for God to tell him to go. He still waited for God to tell him to go. Even though it looked right. Even though it looked good. Even though it felt right. It felt like the right thing to do at that time. He still waited on God for the instruction from God to say, okay, now's the time. Now you can get off the boat. Now it's ready for you. Are we waiting for God's timing, or are we still trying to do things all on our own timing? We've talked about this a lot, that God is outside of time. He doesn't operate the same way that we do in a linear timescape. So that means that he sees us right now. He also sees Jesus on the cross right now. He sees Jesus resurrected right now. He sees what's happening to Noah right now. He's outside of time. He can see it all right here, like pages on a book. And we're in the book. We can't see what's happening next. But God, outside of time, in his infinite knowledge, says, okay, now you can get off the boat. Now you can get off the boat. So I want to take a few things from this in the time that we have left. The first thing is a statement of comfort, and that God remembers you. God remembers you. I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way, right? Sometimes it doesn't feel like God remembers us. Sometimes it doesn't feel like things are going our way. Sometimes it feels like we're stuck on a boat. I don't know how many times in the last year have you guys thought, man, when is this going to end? How much longer do we have to do this thing? How much further are we going to have to go? What are we doing? Does it feel like we're stuck in a boat and not able to go anywhere? A little bit, right? I think we can all relate to this, but know this, verse 1, but God remembered Noah. God remembers you. Sometimes we need to go through the flood. Sometimes there's these storms in our lives, these floods in our lives that we need to go through in order for something brand new to happen. And in the song we sang, the second song, Beautiful Things, it says, you make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things out of us. There's all this pain, all this hurt, all these things that we experience as humankind. Those are things that sometimes we have to go through those valleys in order to see the mountaintops. Sometimes the floods have to cover the mountains in order for us to get there. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've experienced the floods and have felt his grace and his mercy afterwards. 2013, I had lost a job, and I thought it was the most horrific thing ever. My wife was pregnant with our youngest. We were having our fourth child. We had already sold our house, and we were in the process of buying another one. And apparently banks don't like it when you don't have a job. Did you know that? Like, they won't give you money post-2008 if you don't have a job. Before 2008, you could do anything and get a house. But after 2008, so we were looking at homelessness. I mean, we had family, but we had no home. My wife was pregnant with our fourth child. We had just sold our home, and I had just lost my job. I felt a little bit hopeless. I remember that Friday. It's always a Friday when they fire you. If you get asked into your manager's office on a Friday, like at 3, 4 o'clock, just don't go. Don't go in there, okay? It's a trap, all right? They're not giving you cookies or candy or giving you a raise, any of those things. They'll give you a raise on Monday. They'll fire you on Friday. Just letting you know from experience, okay? So avoid that meeting at all costs if you can, okay? I remember coming home and I was in tears the whole way home, not knowing what I was going to do. And I met with one of the people who fired me after the fact. It was a management company. They'd come in and taken over, and it wasn't working out. But he wanted to invest in me and make sure that I could get back on my feet. And he talked to me. We met at a Starbucks, and he said, what do you want to do? What do you like doing? And I said, well, I really like people. I like doing all this kind of stuff. I like being around people. I like talking to people for the most part. I like, I'm kind of that way. I like to serve people. And we talked about some of the different jobs that we were doing, and he said, how come you're not in full-time ministry, vocational ministry? And I said, well, I'm leading worship at a church, my dad's church right now. He's an associate pastor, so I'm leading worship there. And I'm the only worship leader they got, and it's going really well. I preach there sometimes. I'm on the board. And so I'm really tied up with all that kind of stuff. And this guy, I forget his name, he looked at me and he goes, oh, okay, now I understand that job that you're doing for the church that's the job that's too big for God to fill. That's the job that God can't fill, right? You're the exception. You're the one that if you leave, that won't be replaced. And I was like, okay, I get it. You fired me. Now you're telling me I'm not a big deal. Can we just give me a little bit of slack here, please? Give me a little bit of something, some positivity. He said, no, you need to be in full-time ministry. This needs to be this is who you are. Now go do it. And it was in that moment that the idea for Restoration Church came about. It was a dark, dark flood, and I didn't know what we were going to do. It all wound up working out beautifully for us. But there was a time where I had no idea what was going to happen. Not everything ends that way, though, does it? Not everything ends perfectly with a great story. I was talking to my mom last night about my sister-in-law. She died of cancer in 2012. 30-some years old, my age, right now. That was a flood. And I'm still kind of waiting to see the benefit of that, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm still in the boat on that one. Can we be honest? See, I don't like that every single Christian song that we sing always ends in happiness and joy and everything's all completed and fulfilled. Like, we can have joy in these trials. We should have joy in these trials, but what does that joy look like? Sometimes there's pain in these trials. Sometimes the joy is hard to see. Sometimes the joy is hard to manage. But if we go through the flood, His grace is enough. Now, what I have seen out of that is God's grace and His love poured out on me and onto my family. All these years later, we still see His grace and mercy. When I was 4, my younger brother died. That was a flood. I was 4 years old, looking for my brother because it was time for dinner. Little did I know he was drowned in our swimming pool. He was 2 years old. That was a flood. That was a major flood for my family. And we've seen some fruit from that. As odd as this is, my parents have come alongside family after family after family that have lost a close loved one, has lost a child, and has been able to guide them through this experience and show them the love of Christ that they didn't know otherwise. Just this last year, they were able to minister to a couple that had just lost their child through a tragic accident. If my brother had never died, my parents would have never known that grace and that love, and would have never been able to relate to someone going through that. Sometimes the floods are necessary for what God is molding us into. And so I urge you, if you are in a flood of your life, if there's floods happening in your life, don't try to get out of it as quickly as you possibly can. You're there for a reason. Wait on God. And in His timing, He will pull you through. I know this isn't like the happiest message in the world, but I think we lose that. I think we lose the ability to wait on Him. I think we lose the ability to just see what He has for us. See, we're in this like need it now generation where everything's instant, right? Everything is 100% like you don't have to wait for anything anymore. You can watch whatever you want, right? Netflix used to be a thing where you actually had to ask for the DVD, and then they would ship you the DVD, and it would take a few days, and you had to kind of plan it out. And then you would get that one, they would send it back, and then you would get another one, and then, but you couldn't just do it on demand. I mean, before that, there was Blockbuster. We actually had to drive to the video store and actually get a video, like a VCR, videotape, not even a DVD. Anybody remember those days? You had to go to the store and you'd spend hours looking for a videotape. I mean, I would anyway. Me and my friends on a Friday, we would just spend hours looking for a movie to watch. We'd finally figure one out by like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. We'd find it, watch it maybe by midnight, be home in bed by 4. That was a different time. But we're in this need it now generation where anything you could possibly want, you can have it immediately. Oh, you want to watch TV? Here you go. Here's all the content you could possibly ever need. You can binge anything. It's all at our disposal. Oh, you want sex? Okay, here you go. Right there. Instantly. At your fingertips. You need more money? Okay, well, there's ways to do that too. We are in an instant generation, and we don't learn the value of waiting anymore. We don't know what it means to wait. We have more addiction, we have more anger, we have more issues, we're more anxious as a society than we've ever been before. It's because we're so quick to try to get out of this flood of our lives, like, oh, I don't want to feel that feeling, I don't want to have that emotion, I don't want to go through this, I want to make myself feel better immediately. What are the things that I can do to make myself feel better right now? And let's do that. God, I don't have time to wait on you. I don't have time for you to work in my life. I don't have time to this. I need a fix right now. God, can you make it happen right now? We lose sight of so much when we have a need-it-now generation, mentality of life. God's not in any hurry. I don't know if you know that about him or not. God's not in any hurry. He does it exactly in his timing when it's ready. And a lot of the times, you guys, it's not going to make sense for us. It doesn't make any sense. I think of the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead in the New Testament. You can look it up in John chapter 11 if you want to. We're not going to really go there today, but John chapter 11, it's the account of Lazarus. And Lazarus was a friend of Jesus. And Lazarus got sick and he died. I'm going to turn there and read just a couple of verses for you guys. You don't have to turn there because I'm just going to kind of quickly go through it. Lazarus was ill, and Jesus knew that he was dying. And his sisters come up to Jesus and they say, Jesus, Lazarus is sick, he's dying. And Jesus said, give me a minute, I'll be there. Give me some time. And the sisters went back home and they're like, I don't know if we have time. And they didn't have time. Lazarus ends up dying. Lazarus is dead and in the grave for 4 days. And the grave in that time is a tomb, so you didn't have to dig anything. For 4 days, Lazarus was dead before Jesus showed up. And Mary is confused. Why did you wait so long? Why did this happen? Why did you wait? You could have come earlier. Jesus, you could have come earlier and everything would have been fine. I know you could have healed Lazarus, and now we're stuck. In verse 22, I just want to read this for you. This is what Martha says, Mary and Martha. Martha's here. And she says, but even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Even when life doesn't make sense, we can still trust in that God has something for us. And that whatever we're going through, it's going to bring glory and honor to him. Even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha's like, I know he's going to rise again and the resurrection and all this kind of stuff, like when everybody rises again and we go up to heaven. Yeah, I get it. And Jesus is like, no, she's going to rise. He's going to rise again. And he calls Lazarus out. And Lazarus comes out. He waited 4 days. You want to know why Jesus waited 4 days? In Jewish tradition, there was a superstition that a person's spirit would hover over the body for 3 days. Just in case they're going to come back to life. Just in case they come back to life. The Spirit, this is a Jewish superstition. They would say, okay, after 4 days, we know they're done. Or after 3 days, we know that this is not going to happen. So on the 4th day, when all hope seemed lost, all hope was completely gone, Jesus steps in and says, watch what I can do. So in your life, the flood of your life, maybe it seems like all hope is gone. Whatever situation you have, and I know there are situations here, whatever situation you find yourself in, know that hope is not lost. We're waiting on God for His timing. Like I said, we try to do things on our own, though, don't we? We get impatient, and we start going. We start to be more like the raven in this story. More like the raven. See, the raven was a little bit different than the dove. And I want to tell you, be more like the dove and not the raven. Be a dove, not a raven. The raven left the ark, and a raven is a scavenger, right? A raven just kind of eats whatever it wants to eat. There was plenty of scavenging for that raven to eat, wasn't there? Again, this is not on the mural in your kids' room. There's some death that's happened all around them. And we don't like to think about that part. But the raven was completely satisfied landing on death and eating from death. It was fine. It didn't need anything else. It's good. It can float. But the dove has standards. The dove's not just going to eat something. Oh, maybe it does. I don't know. But the dove waited. The dove waited. Be a dove. The dove waited for life. The dove waited for promises. The dove waited for what God had in store. Too many times we find ourselves more like the raven, just happy with whatever material possessions we can gain here on earth, whatever things keep us happy here on earth. Meanwhile, we're missing life completely. Jesus said He offered to come to bring us life and to bring it in abundance. He didn't come to bring us death. He came to bring us life. And too many times we miss life because we're so focused on death. We're so focused on what's around us. So be a dove, not a raven. Let's finish this chapter off. So basically, Noah's left the boat. They've gone to ground. They've finally gotten their legs back underneath them. How wobbly would you have been? Pretty wobbly. I've gone on a boat and then gotten off the boat. I've never even gone on a cruise, but sometimes your legs are pretty wobbly after the fact. I bet they were really wobbly. I don't know. You guys think so? Okay. Verse 20. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in His heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Last point I want us to remember. Last point I want us to get is remember God. Noah left the ark and he immediately remembered God, and he was thankful to God. He built an altar and had a sacrifice, one of those clean animals that he had from the boat. And he offered a sacrifice up to God. Remember God. When the flood is over, when the storms are over, when God says, okay, it's time to get off the boat, it's time to start walking again, it's time to start going, don't walk away and forget who God is. Does this ever happen to you where like something great happens in your life and you forget to thank whoever it was that did it for you? It was probably God, but whoever it was. I've done that multiple. I almost did it this morning, to be honest with you. We were having some tech issues in the back. I couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work, and then I figured out how to get it to work, and that's why for those of you watching the live stream, that we didn't get here until the last song, but I was really struggling to try to get this thing working, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I prayed, Lord, I need some help here. I need you to help me figure this thing out. And so I looked it up, figured it out, got on a different Wi-Fi network, and everything worked brilliantly. That's the Cliff Notes version. And immediately afterwards, I almost forgot to thank God. because I wouldn't have been able to do this on my own. Not a chance. But just a small win. God in his mercy and in his love and in his grace said, hey, I'm going to give you a win. Here you go. Try this. Puts that thought in my brain, and then it's like, oh, okay, do that. Got it. Here we go. And here we are. Hey, Facebook. Remember God. There's a story in the New Testament, in the Gospel of Luke. It's a short story of Jesus healing 10 lepers. You guys remember this story? Those of you that grew up in church, he heals 10 lepers, right? And they're from all over the place. They're from Samaria and Galilee, I believe. And he heals these 10 lepers, and he says, go, your faith will make you clean. And he has to go and tell the priest. They have to go before the priest. There's this whole ritual that lepers would have to do to get entered back into society. They can't just go into society and be like, hey, look, I'm clean. They would have to go to a priest and do this whole cleansing thing. So Jesus tells them to go to the priest that they're going to be healed. And so they, all 10, go, and one remembers to come back. Just 1 out of 10, 10% comes back and thanks Jesus for what he's done in his life. Remember God. You're in a storm of your life, you're in a flood of your life, it will end. And when it ends, remember God. Mark this as remembering what God has done. In the book of, I just lost my train of thought. Never mind, I don't remember. So I'm going to keep going. I don't have time anyway. That was God being like, hey, wrap it up, Brian. Stop this, okay? Don't be content with the waste. Remember what God has done. And continue remembering what God has done. This week is a special week for the church. This week is a special week for followers of Christ. Today is Palm Sunday. Jesus' triumphant entry. And just a few short days later, his crucifixion. And then even fewer days after that, his resurrection. This is the week that changed history. This is the week that changed time. We measure time by Jesus, before Christ. This is the week where Jesus makes the sacrifice so that we can have life, so that we can be here in a brewery learning about Jesus, so that we can remember God, so that we can remember that God remembers us. This is the week that we remember God. And on Friday, we're going to do Good Friday. We're going to have our groups together, and Clayton talked about this a little bit. We're going to be having our groups on Good Friday, right around 7 o'clock p.m. And we're going to gather together. We're going to look at the 7 statements that Jesus has made from the cross. And we're going to study those for a little bit, and then we're going to take communion together. And we take communion because we remember God and what he's done for us. It's a very significant time, especially the taking of communion. We remember Jesus' body broken for us. When we take the bread, we take the cup, and we remember the blood that was poured out on our behalf. And remember the flood that Jesus went through in order to give us life. And if Jesus was able to go through that flood, if he was able to go before us, and we follow him, then the floods that we face are no match for the God that we serve, for the King that we get to live for. And his name is Jesus. So we're going to remember that on Good Friday. We're going to celebrate Easter on Sunday right here at the brewery. Would you bow your heads with me? We're going to pray. Maybe you're in the stage of waiting. You're in the midst of a flood. I want to encourage you that God remembers you. Maybe you've forgotten God. there's still hope for you. Like we said last week, there's hope because there's breath in your lungs. You can come to Him. Just a simple prayer, you can say, Lord, I give you my life. I give you the flood in my life, and I pray that you would wash me clean. God, we thank you for the sacrifice that you've given to us, Lord, through your Son, Jesus Christ. God, I pray that we remember you as we go about our day, as we go about our week, Lord. God, this wouldn't just be a thing that we do every single Sunday where we learn something about you and then we forget the moment we leave. But God, we would continue to have you imprinted on our hearts so that when we go through the floods, when we go through these trials, when we go through things, that we would see your light, see your love. God, thank you for remembering us and for giving us life. It's in your name, the name of Jesus, that we pray. Amen.